Hey, good morning. It is Monday, January 30th, 2023 at 9:42 a.m. my time. And boy, what a performance by the Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes to overcome a bad knee injury and that crazy penalty at the end that gave the Kansas City Chiefs an opportunity to defeat their nemesis at the moment, a new rivalry, the Cincinnati Bengals, and they're off to the Super Bowl, and I think it should be a great one. Going to be interested to see, um, all of the different storylines. But like they've said, it's the Andy Reid Super Bowl, and what I love about the convergence of people and the Warriors that, you know, and I always tell my son this, that the team that makes it to the Super Bowl typically team tends to be the team that withstands injuries and can somehow maneuver against all of these obstacles, because at the beginning of the season everybody starts fresh and there's so much talent in the NFL. It could go so many different directions, but by the time you get to the end, it's this sort of, I guess, you know, this commitment to rise above the obstacles, the challenges, everything that's thrown at you to achieve freaking greatness. And to me, that is the American spirit. That is the American way. And I know a lot of people could roll their eyes and go, yeah, bullshit, corporate this and that, and everybody sucks, and football is just a fucking brutal game, and all of these other kinds of things. No, it's about achievement. It's about a lot of different people coming from different places to aspire to their greatest selves, to work in unison, to be able to get to a goal. And that's always been my mentality. So imagine if we're watching this as fans, the 90% of us who actually love football, and we're watching this as fans, and we realize that the whole thing's been fucking, undermined. That there are powers that be that can, pay the refs, that can pay somebody to take a dive, that can do this, that, and the other. And and the product that you get is a fake product because somebody's profiteering off of it behind the scenes because of bets that you don't see cooked up. Now, one of the greatest films I've ever seen, and now I'm going to talk about the 70s version of The Longest Yard, even though I really did enjoy the Adam Sandler version as well, particularly because there were so many, former NFL guys and, Steve Austin or, and some real big guys, it was fun to watch. But the 70s version was just, I mean, one of my top five films in my lifetime. And Burt Reynolds and that whole odyssey against all odds to go against the corrupt, system, to really, even though the guy's a criminal and he's got all sorts of flaws, the one flaw that he doesn't have is he's not going to fucking not be his best self. That he's not, or I should say, his competitive self on the gridiron, sort of thing. There's a purity to it, and I'm sorry to all of those of you who I understand and I know. I grew up being a punk rock guy, and maybe anarchist sort of mentality a little bit here and there, and all of the people that are like fuck the system and this and that and anarchy and blah blah blah. And I'll tell you, one of the biggest ironies of my life evolving is to find out some of the worst anarchists are fucking libertarians, puppeteered by billionaires. So there's that. But look, the long and the short of it is nothing's ever going to be perfect. But what I can't stand above all else are lying, thieving, diabolical, underhanded motherfuckers that rise to the top through deception and all manner, shape, or form of corruption that leaves countless people in the wake of its misery. That it's just unbelievable that in 2023 that we are in a situation because of so much media, because of so much manipulation, because of people with resources and organizations that can get a different message out there. I mean, it's like for example, this morning I saw on the front page of the New York Times, there's this revelation that the Live Tour, which is a golf tour, a professional golf tour, a challenge to the PGA, where the Saudi-backed PGA, the Saudi Sovereign Wealth Fund, paying top dollar, for some of the best golfers in the world to, dance and be marionetted on its stage because they get paid a ton of money. The worst of which is Phil Mickelson. And I've expressed this a million times in the past, but Phil Mickelson came out of Arizona State University. I went to Arizona State University. I actually went to Arizona State University the same time Mickelson did. Mickelson wound up at one of my house parties, when I was a senior in college, and I thought the guy was a cool guy and I loved his career, until I found out a lot about his betting and gambling problems and some of his, let's say darker self, scenarios, because he comes across as such a good guy. But in the end, the guy ends up, whoring himself out to the Saudis. And he was complaining the other day on Twitter about you got to wear, certain, you can't like show your skin, I guess, with your socks. And it's just ridiculous things. But, fuck you, Phil. You're playing for the Saudis. So that's the choice you made first and foremost. But the other side of the equation is that many of you might recognize the name Pat Tillman. Pat Tillman came out of Arizona State as well. He played on the 1990, oh God, what are we talking, 4? Boy, I can't even remember the year now, and it's kind of crazy because it was so important to me then. Rose Bowl champion Arizona State Sun Devils. And, he ended up playing in the NFL, and he had a big contract, and he ended up dropping it all right after 9/11. And he joined the Army Rangers, and he was shot by friendly fire that the military covered up. Because he was such a poster guy, he did this square jaw, total warrior looking badass. But he was also a very thoughtful, introspective, philosopher warrior, quite frankly. Okay. And which for my generation is not, completely unique, but boy, I tell you, Pat Tillman was like, it's just such the highest level of all of it. I mean, and I had such admiration and such respect for him, but he went to Afghanistan to give up all of that great wealth and opportunity to go serve his country after 9/11. And here we see in 2023, Phil Mickelson selling his country out, selling everybody out, and playing for the Saudis, who were deeply, deeply involved with 9/11. I've said it before, I don't think they're the causality of 9/11 necessarily, but I know they were involved. I know that the intelligence agencies in the United States had information about the sleeper cells that were here, as well as people that were paying for them, and they could have easily, thwarted the situation, but they didn't. And then lo and behold, we have 9/11 and 20 years of war, and that's one side of the equation of the grand corruption, global corruption that has complete control, on the other side of the financial corruption that I continue to reveal to you. And another piece of news that got my attention this morning was apparently there's this oil pipeline billionaire who gave $1 million to Texas Governor Abbott's campaign, and Beto O'Rourke called him out on it. And now this guy is going to sue Beto O'Rourke for libel, which is absolute fucking bullshit, because this is free speech. He's a political candidate. This guy is apparently claiming that he's not a public citizen. Oh, but he can work behind in the shadows to pump $1 million into a campaign to do what exactly? I mean, this is the whole nature of what it is that I'm trying to reveal to you in both capacities, okay? But first, let me just ask you to ponder this question. What is the universality of what all criminals have in common? One combines all of them. Doesn't matter if they're just, a street thug, some sort of pimp on the street corner, or some sort of pimp up at the highest levels of Wall Street. I always refer to pimps, hoes, and junkies, and they're all the same. It doesn't matter what level they are. But what do all criminals have in common? Put it in the comment section. What do they all have in common? Secrecy, lies, deception. Secrecy is ultimately the deal. And so when we conjure up this notion, well, I don't want to say conjure. Let me frame it like this. What exactly does dark money conjure in your mind? And then how do you equate it to, well, dark money is illegal? Dark money for what? Post Citizens United, Supreme Court that says dark money, corporations or people that you can have, they can finance campaigns because it's free speech. And now the irony of that is that here's a guy using free speech to pay for a campaign to do stuff that Beto O'Rourke is challenging, and then he's going to have the audacity to sue on libel. Now, it's fucking ridiculous, but the way it works out in terms of, you got to think about, the actual nuance of this whole thing, especially when you got a lot of money and you've got firepower of accountants and attorneys and everything who work on secrecy, to be quite frank with you. But, in Austin, Texas, most of the judges, from what I understand, are Democrats, or some capacity that would throw this out because it's ridiculous, right? But here's the thing. They could appeal the case and the suit to the Supreme Court of Texas, which is stacked with these guys, that these robber baron oil guys, magnates, and I know because I'm from the state of Texas, and my family was in fossil fuel, and I know Houston inside and out. And the long and the short of it is there is a group of individuals, and they have been going way back to the 50s and even before that, that, constituted the John Birch Society, where these guys would pay for, conservative Republicans that mask this sort of patriarchal, church-going white republic, but that's going to do the bidding of these goddamn corporations behind the scenes. Now, in the old days, I was like, my granddad was a wildcatter, for example. And he used to go to the golf course to make deals with his fellow oil guys. And he used to say, you got to drive for show and putt for dough. I used to love this methodology, right? But the long and the short of it is, a wildcatter, taking risks, capitalism, risk reward, all of that sort of thing is different than the guys up at the top that get to puppeteer the whole thing. That's called corruption, or a lot of times monopolies leads to corruption and everything else, which of course we had a phase in our society that started after the Civil War that goes to all the progressive movements, that leads to Teddy Roosevelt's trust busting, that then eventually leads to FDR's New Deal. What I'm telling you is we can't get a, for example, Green New Deal in the context and the confluence of fossil fuel and climate change and all the rest of it, until you come to grips with what I'm saying is we've got to create the clean New Deal. So I posted last night on Twitter, and I got a lot of reaction from this, and it's interesting to see what kind of people I'm actually touching, and because now they're starting to awaken to some of the things that I'm revealing. But I said, look, not one elected representative in the United States or anyone in mainstream media put together the entire story of the largest criminal corruption in history that never ended, which I continue to bring you. And am I some sort of, again, I hate saying it like listen to me, I'm so great. I'm like, no, I'm not that guy. I just fucking did the work, the research, and I see it for what it is. I see the forest for the trees. It's the Matrix. And again, I don't feel like I'm trying to compare myself to a superhero, but it's very Neo-like in the Matrix, where you get to see the shit in slow motion because you see all the patterns and how these things work. And so, consider, for example, the theme of this what the fuck file, right? Which is, okay, Saudi Arabia is greenwashing through professional athletes, which it's not just doing in professional golf, it's doing in soccer and a couple of other things, where, these fabulous, world-recognized athletes are playing for the Saudis, who, of course, their money is coming from fossil fuel that we protected and refined and created the energy and the distribution and everything else. They're a surrogate of us, minus the fact of where they're located geographically and ultimately the control between the Saudi royal kingdom and then the people of Saudi Arabia. But it's just been this monstrosity where it's like, okay, we'll keep you protected to protect our space. You trade in American dollars on oil, and 75% of the world's economy is dependent upon it, and we're going to make sure that we protect it. Okay, and then 9/11 happens. Who was Vice President Cheney? Where did he come from? Halliburton, oil, right? What about the Bush administration? Oil. Ironically, the largest contributor to the Bush administration was not Exxon or a military-industrial, apparatus or some sort of, hedge fund that's in the space like the Carlyle Group, that sort of thing. It was actually Roland Arnall, who was a subprime gargantuan lender, which is just a fucking what we reveal. Okay? And so another thing that I said on Twitter the other day, and the way I look at it is like this, the government, when it got hijacked by these, diabolical dark forces that represent these corporations and small population at that, they pulled a coup d'etat ultimately on the United States. And it's been going on for a long time. They're organized, they're connected, they run campaigns. And as a result of this, we became a government of, by, and for the corporation. And many of you go, oh my God, it's capitalism, it's this and that. And again, because I'm very nuanced about this and I understand capital is like fire. Capital is what allows entrepreneurs, people see a need, fill a need, people that find new ways to get through this. And boy, do we need to get through this. A way, my God, we wouldn't have the internet if it wasn't for pioneers or any number of evolutions, right? And especially the tech space, right? Without people being able to realize money to do the work that they've got to do, to pay the other people, to have engineers, to push the ball forward, to create a vertical and everything else, it's not about in the wrong hands without accountability to the law. It just becomes corporate fascism undergirded by a criminal syndicate. And so what I've been saying is that when you look at the long lens and you look at what just happened with Tyree Nichols, and we're reacting to that, most of us are now looking past the event itself and into the systemology, the systemic nature of policing. Okay, that's one side of it. But what I've been trying to tell you is there's the other side of it too, that includes the judiciary and prosecutors and people that are involved with foreclosure mills and servicers that have been operating in a way that they've been foreclosing illegally on millions of people without the ability to do so. And the courts just allow it to happen because the wellspring of the money is coming from none other than the guys that created this problem and then got trillions and trillions of dollars in the aftermath that none of you have put the piece of the puzzle together. And I mean none of you by way of percentages of the population. I know that so many of you get different pockets of it. Not too many of you get the entire story. I'll repeat it at this stage of my What the Fuck Files, is the nature of following the 2008 great financial crisis. We had the Federal Crisis Inquiry Commission that put together 1,000 witnesses and testimony and unbelievable introspection into what happened to ultimately have it fall on deaf ears because the media wasn't following it, because the media didn't want to follow it. It was too complicated, or they got paid not to. Similar to, quite frankly, 9/11. 9/11 happened just like I'm telling you. What the fuck? We couldn't have thwarted 9/11? Of course we could have thwarted 9/11. Yeah, it was 21, 22 years ago. 21, I guess. But the bottom line is, do you don't think we had the technology then to be able to thwart 19 guys that were just couldn't speak English, that went to flight schools, that weren't learning how to land, and we had the information and we couldn't figure out how to stop that? And we have agencies where it's like literally tens of billions of fucking dollars go to intelligence, where they could look up your ass if they wanted to find out exactly where your fucking mole is, or whatever the case is, from a satellite that's 10,000 miles high or something. I mean, of course we have that technology. Of course we could have thwarted the 2008 great financial crisis. What I show you in the con is that there were whistleblowers at every single level of this incredible pipeline that went to their supervisors, that went to the regulators, that went to the appropriate law enforcement. All of them were thwarted or ignored or purged or thrown out. I mean, that's the whole story of the con. And it's 29 trillion times bigger than fucking Watergate, and you don't know about it because the media doesn't tell these stories. The media fucking picks a side, does stupid shit, doesn't give you the big picture, and then we're on to the next thing. But then nothing fucking changes. And over the course of the last 20 years, like I've been trying to get this thought out of my mind through this truth bomb, and I'm finally arriving at this intersection, which is the American government has been at war with the American people on behalf and puppeteered by this small cabal of diabolical fucking criminals. And what do all criminals have in common, no matter at the lowest or the highest? Secrecy. Secrecy. And when you get the professionals to play ball because they're making a lot of money by doing all sorts of scenarios with fixing the regulation or doing offshore or accounting and financialization, all of those things are on display in the con, for example. Bottom line is you're getting suckered, you're getting played, but to the tune where this thing is destroying the world. It has destroyed the integrity of the law. It has destroyed separation of powers. It has destroyed the American dream. And my dream is for millions of us to come together based on the light of justice that we have spent years and years aggregating, thousands of miles covering, thousands of people that we've talked to, millions of dollars to put all of this stuff together, that we got censored, we got suppressed, we got a pillow over our fucking face by this machine in the shadows that makes sure you don't know what the fuck's going on. So the only way we can do anything to change that is because of what my great friend Roseanne Rabiola Mile had laid out in her last description. This is a grass fire. We got to create a grass fire that everybody comes to this understanding. It's a come to Jesus moment. It's come to Moses moment. It's pull the fucking glasses off. It's this obfuscation, plastic semi-permeable bubble around our brains where it's like, what, you can't do something about it? You don't have to do anything about it. I'll do it. You need to join me so I can help organize. If you want to throw $13 in for the reflection and the exclamation point that you're a patriot because you understand that it was 13 colonies that rebelled against tyranny to start off what the United States is supposed to be, that's what this is all about, is to be the United States. We are not the United States right now. We are a bad science fiction, nightmarish, dystopian novel of unprecedented magnitude, and everything's on the line. Free markets are on the line. The integrity of law is on the line. The future I can't even think of the word. The earth being habitable for life. The earth is going to be here whether or not we're here. If we poison ourselves, the earth's going to spin for another, I think it's 5 billion years until it gets swallowed by the sun, right? I mean, that's really the nature of it. How audacious and stupid are most of the people that don't believe in climate change because they can't put two and two together because they didn't graduate from fucking high school, no less, and they've got an opinion that can be morphed and manipulated and purged by these diabolical bastards behind the scenes that would cover up 9/11. Meanwhile, half of these people are saying to service members, hey, thank you for your service. But what? Thank you for your service to what? Halliburton? Goldman Sachs? Service to a corrupt judiciary? This has got to end. It's got to be purged. We have to purge corruption. My name is Patrick Lovell. I'm a guy who produced the con at www.thecon.tv, which reveals it all. We've got social media all over the place. I just need millions of you to connect, share, help me get the word out. I know there's a lot of people out there in all sorts of ideologies that are like, okay, wait a second. Is this guy trying to create some sort of master race to, oppress me? No, I'm trying to create a system where we're all equal under the rules of the law and we're all capable of getting to where we want to go through the river of life based on our own resilience and our own capacity and our own intelligence and our own dynamism to rise to where we want to go, to be able to provide for our families and live a life of liberty, meaning, and justice and dignity. Just the way it was fucking designed. Liberty and justice for all. Onwards and upwards.